Okay, so welcome. Today's I'll try 10-15 minutes how to build a website with Vue.js, a static website. So anybody is still building websites? Anybody has a blog? Or everybody on Facebook? So WordPress is the big number one, WordPress.com, and they even claim 30% of the internet are powered by WordPress. I think these are like 50 million websites or more. So the rest is all Facebook. So let's get started with, so 10 years ago, so it's 11 years ago, who are the big guys? If you build a website, who is the number one? So WordPress is the number one, and then there's Facebook. So the number two, Drupal and Joomla. So these are the big guys 10 years ago. And it's a dynamic website. What's the difference between a dynamic website and a static website? So the big difference is if you have a dynamic website, you need a database. In case of WordPress, you have a MySQL database, SQL database, application server. So the application server would be PHP. And then you have the web server. And the important part is on every request, it builds the page on the fly. And so, for example, if you go to, if you use WordPress, they even have a documentation page. They show you, like, if you try to request a page, like behind the scene, what happens, you know? It's trying to connect to the database. It's including the functions. It's, you know, hundreds of queries. It's trying to activate the plugins, you know, and there's so much going on. So it's actually surprising that it works. And today, you know, 10 years later, because if you use JavaScript, every week there's a new framework. Every week there's a new tool to build VuePress. Every week there's a new tool to build a website, but 10 years ago, WordPress, Drupal, and Joomla are the big guys, and now 10, 11 years later, do you know like who are the big guys today? In 2018, so today PHP rules, you know, and the big guys, WordPress is growing 30%, and Drupal, Joomla. So there's no change the last 15 years, but the static websites, so who are the big guys? If you build static websites, what's the WordPress in the static website compiler building scene? Hugo, Jekyll, yeah, these are good ones. So the big ones in the past, like if anybody remembers, Microsoft Front Page, Dreamweaver, Netscape Composer. And so the big guy, Hugo, is in Go. So Hugo is a big one, and Jekyll. So they usually pick name Victor Hugo and Jekyll and Hyde, the big names from the world literature. So VuePress is trying, you know, to compete not with Gatsby or with WordPress. But there was mentioned, you know, the big brother is React. And so in the React world, Gatsby is the established static website builder for React, the big guy in the React world. And so what's the React version, the Vue version for, sorry, I lost this one. Oh, here. What's the version for Vue? So Gatsby is the big one, and there was, Rob mentioned, that Vue is now more popular than React on GitHub. It has more than 100,000 stars. And so, hello, VuePress. So VuePress is pretty new, and it was started by Ivan Yu. So if anybody knows who's this guy, so Ivan Yu doesn't mean you. So Ivan Yu, he is the main developer and the inventor of Vue itself. And it just started, the history was started, the first release, 0.1, in April this year. So it's just April, that might be 3 months ago or something. So it's pretty new. And so what was the point, you know? if I go back, there are hundreds or even there are thousands of static website builders. Static. This is the list ranked by the list ranked by GitHub stars. So the WordPress in the WordPress in the static world is Jekyll, and Hugo is the number 2, and Next doesn't really count for React, and Gatsby is the number 3, and Hexo is the number 4. It's in JavaScript. And anybody knows how Vue builds its documentation, its main website? So Vue is built in Hexo, and they're using Gitbook for some sub-projects. And so the idea was, from the inventor of Vue, was, of course, why are we not using Vue for building our websites and our documentations? You know, we are Vue guys. Yeah, we know Vue best. Why are we not using a static website builder in Vue? And so what he has done, so that's the idea, that we build the documentation website with Vue itself. So he built a new website builder. Sorry. Why? Okay. So he started a new one, and the motivation was to use it for Vue itself, for all the documentation websites. And of course, the Vue is always good. It looks at, like, you know, before Vue there was Angular, and it doesn't start from scratch, but they are pretty good at looking, you know, getting the best ideas from what comes before. And so if you go to the VuePress website on the guide, there is why not? So there is Hexo. If anybody knows Hexo, that's in JavaScript. That's a clone of Jekyll. Jekyll is in Ruby. And so some people don't want to use, if you want to extend Jekyll, you have to do some Ruby. So Hexo is popular because it's a Jekyll clone in JavaScript, so you can use JavaScript for everything. And Hexo is used for the Vue.js.org for all the documentation. And so there's Gitbook, and here you can read, and Next is the Vue version for Next in the React world. And it also has a feature for server-side rendering and static export. So it can be used for static websites, but it's not really. But if you see, to sum up, you know, these are all great, but the great part about Vue itself is that it's super simple. And so even you, why did he not use all these ones? Because he wants to have something that is super, super simple, and that is, you know, he's a good designer, a good coder. So he built something that is super easy to use, but gives you all the power of Vue. And so how does it work? To get started, 1, 2, 3. To get started is super easy. So all you have to do is you install, it's on the Node package module repository, and you install it. One version is globally with Yarn, and then you get the command line, which is called VuePress. And the idea is, you know, if you create a new page, you create the page in text with Markdown. So in this case, a README page, and then hello VuePress. And if I build it, I have my complete website. And the second option is you can start a local development server. And the local development server has the Webpack magic, which means you have hot reloading. So if you change your page, it automatically, if you have the browser open, you know, it automatically rebuilds and updates the browser. You don't have to refresh yourself. And so it's super easy. That's the idea to get started. And it's also minimalistic. So it has, essentially, it has 2 commands. It has 3, but the 2 main commands is the build is the main. So you have the files and then the templates, and it builds your static website. And it has the developer mode with the development server, so you can, you know, you can edit your files, and it automatically rebuilds, and it automatically refreshes if you have the browser open, your pages in the browser. And the eject is if you want to change, it has a built-in template and design theme. If you want to use the built-in and change the built-in design theme, you can eject, which gives you all the Vue components for the layout. And yeah, but usually what you do is so you add it to a project. Let's say you have your project, and currently VuePress is used for documentation. So it's VuePress documents VuePress, and then it documents many sub-projects of Vue, Vue Router, and some others. And so how do you add it to an existing open source project? It's super, again, it's 1, 2, 3. So the difference is you add it to, assuming it's a JavaScript project with a package JSON, you just add it to the package JSON, the VuePress module. And here the important part is the currently only Yarn is working. So the NPM manager is not working with VuePress. So you have to use Yarn. It has to do with if anybody knows NPM, you know, it's a turtle and a turtle and a turtle. It's so all the modules include modules, and they are in folders and subfolders and subfolders. And the Yarn tried to improve it by having a flat structure. And so the NPM cannot handle the installation of the VuePress. It will break for now. So you have to use Yarn. So I think they are trying to fix it sometime. But anyway, so you use Yarn, but you still have the package JSON. And then what you do is you can just use your documentation in a subfolder. And the convention on GitHub, or the convention is docs, you know, docs for documents. So you put your documents in the docs folder. So you make a directory, the docs folder, and you're off to go, you know. You add your documentation pages in the docs. And so a README, this would be your index page. And it's the same principle. And now, because you have it locally installed inside your project, what you can do is you can add the scripts in the package JSON. And then you do VuePress dev docs and VuePress build docs. And so instead of using the local version, the global, you use Yarn docs build and Yarn docs development, and it's using, you know, the local install. And it also builds it into. So how does it look? So the idea is to keep it, VuePress, the idea is to keep it super simple. And what's the easiest, simplest, minimalistic way? It's zero configuration. So if you want documentation or build your website, you don't need any configuration. All you need is your pages. So in this case, the minimalistic would be I have the README. That is the index page. And then I have page 2, page 1 and 2, extra pages. Of course, you can name these pages, you know. You're free to name these pages as you like. But the point is, you know, there is no theme, no layout, no configuration, but it gives you a high quality documentation website. But in this case, the truth is, if you have no configuration, you don't get any navigation bar. So you actually have to add a configuration file. And how it works is you have to create a VuePress subfolder, .VuePress. And in the .VuePress, you add the config.js JavaScript. And so that's the configuration for your VuePress website. And it's JavaScript. So how would it look like, or how does it look like for a simple site? Now you get the navigation and a sidebar and a title. So my VuePress site, and then you have the sidebar, page 1, page 2, and the slash, that's the, and how does it look like? So if you compile it, it looks like this one. It's exactly the same. So that VuePress is the title, that's the sidebar on the left, And it even has a search built in, but the search is local and it's just searching the headings. So it can only search for the heading. So how it works, if I do works, it finds the heading. So it automatically gets the heading 1, heading 2 for the search over your, because it's a single page application, your static website. And that's the built-in, you've seen VuePress, that's the built-in design theme. And because, of course, that's the part, why would you use Vue? Why it's called VuePress? It's, you're encouraged, or of course, it works perfectly with Vue components. So how it works is, if you want to add your own components, there is the components folder. So that's the convention. So you add a components folder in your VuePress folder, and then you can add your own Vue components. So in this case, it's as an example, this is a counter. It's a button and +1, -1. And so how would you add it to your documentation? And so that's the great part of VuePress. You can add your Vue components to your text markdown pages. And how do you add it to your markdown pages? There's no magic. It's just as you would add it to your HTML page. So everybody is familiar with Markdown. So you write your pages in text, and then if you want a heading 1, a heading 2, or bold, or italics, you use simple conventions. So for a heading 1, there's the pound sign. A heading 2 is 2 pounds. And a bold would be with 2 stars. So that's a bold. But in this case, number modifier. So the extension of VuePress is you can just add your VuePress components inside your pages. And not only that you can add your components, you can also program inside your pages. So if you don't have a pre-built component, you can use, in this case, 49 plus 32. This is just a Vue template expression. So inside the Markdown, you can use the expressions. And not only, you can also, you can use HTML, and then you use HTML with Vue. So in this case, a paragraph for 1 of 3, and then it gives you a list. It builds a list of paragraphs, 3 paragraphs. So it's not just, in your regular static website, you can use Markdown, but you cannot use Vue inside your Markdown. But in VuePress, you can have the best of both worlds. You can use Markdown, and it has, if there's interest, it has some great Markdown extensions, and you can use, and how to build it, all Yarn docs built. And what you get in the distribution, by default, you can provide the folder, the output folder, but if you don't say anything, it builds it into the dist for distribution folder. And that's the static website. So the definition of a static website is, these are just a bunch of files, and they don't need a database, and this is your ready-to-serve website. You just have to upload it, to GitHub, to Heroku, to S3, you don't need an application server, you don't need a database, you don't even need a web server. If you go serverless, you can use a storage service, S3 or Firebase, but of course you need a web server, then S3 is the web server. But static, the definition is just a bunch of files. And you see here, it has the best of both worlds. If you want to have search engine optimization, then you want to have single pages. If anybody is going to hit page 2, then you want the page 2 ready to be served as a simple HTML. But on the other hand, if you click from one page to another page, you don't want to reload every page. And so in this case, because it's Vue.js and it's Webpack and everything, it builds a single page application. And here's the magic with the JavaScript bundles. So once you load a page, you know, it's a single page. It's not reloading the next page, but it's, you know, it has the machinery with service workers and everything that if you flip to the next page, it's actually an illusion, you know. You're never flipping to the next page. It's high technology, super efficient.
Does it do server-side rendering?
And of course, it's all server-side rendering. It's because that's all server-side rendering. That's the whole point. So all this, if you add a Vue component, you can only add Vue components that are universal and that are made for server-side rendering, because that, you know, the static is the definition that you build it ahead of time. Everything has to get built ahead of time, and so there's server-side rendering for Vue.js components. And so what VuePress actually does is it has the router, and then it knows all the pages. And if you do build, what it actually does is it pings every page, and then it saves the page as a HTML snapshot, every individual page. But it also has the Vue dynamic application. But to get the static snapshot, what it actually does, you know, if you do build, it does goes through the router with every page and makes a snapshot of every HTML page. And that's the whole thing. So the last is where's the theme, the design coming from. So it has currently the built-in beautiful theme for documentation, and it's on the roadmap to extend it with plugins and for blogging. But for now, you know, it's perfect, fantastic for documentation, and you can adjust it. And that's how it looks like. If you eject, you get the complete theme. And of course, that was the whole exercise, that the design and the layout and the theme is all in Vue. And so if you look at the theme, you know, you have the page view, search box view, sidebar view, and the styling is with the stylus language. But if you look at the home page, home view, you know, there's no big magic. It has the hero image and the configuration, and that's pretty much it. And so if anybody's interested, I recommend, you know, the VuePress. You're looking here. You're looking at the VuePress website on Vue.js, and it's built with VuePress, of course. And it also, you know, how to get started, or the Markdown extension goodies, how you do tables, table of contents, you just need a macro. Or it has the containers, you know, if you want to have tip warning error. So that's a great Markdown extension, which is missing in all the others. It has code highlighting and so on and so forth. But the important part is, you know, on GitHub, that's the VuePress project. And so it actually practices what it preaches. So it has the code, and then the documentation is just the it's inside the project. So in this case, it would be docs, you know. So it has the documentation, and you see here's the setup, which is the README is actually the site which you have seen, you know. And then it has the different sections. So the config is actually not the configuration, but it's explaining the section for configuration. It has README, just the README. And it's all a bunch of Markdown files. And the idea is if you have your own components and your own configuration, you give it in .VuePress. So in .VuePress, there's the configuration. And the components here are just silly examples. So it has just, you know, foo and bar, which are getting used as a showcase, because the real components are in the theme, hidden. And if you look at an important feature of Vue, because he's half Chinese, so it's one important feature from the start is multilingual, and all the Vue documentation sites, they are at least in Chinese and in English. So they all So if I click on the config, yeah, so that's here, that's the config. Let's see. All it does, you know, is it shows the sections, and then it has the section for English, the section guide, configuration reference, default theme, and then it has the same section for Chinese. Yeah. So the last one on the README, it has more examples. So it's not getting used for now for the main Vue.js, but the showcase, you know, you see the Vue ecosystem, so the Vue router, the Vue loader, Vue test utils, Vuex, Vue client. These are already using the VuePress for the documentation. And if you click, you know, the actual, it's open source. You see their website and how they are using it and the documentation. And so as a last one, if you do the Vue, okay, sorry. So Vue.js.org. How do I know that it's Hexo? You know, here is the link, Vue.js.org. And that's the source for the website. And so this website is built in Hexo, which is the Jekyll clone, which is using a kind of Django templates for the theming. So it's pretty good, but you know, it's hard to use with Vue. So that's the Hexo, which the idea is to get replaced with VuePress. And they're starting with the sub-projects before taking on the big one. But it looks, you know, for just 2-3 months, super easy to get started if you remember to use Yarn. It's not working with NPM. So question and all the thanks for your time.